Oh, Dad.
This film tells the story of humanity, which is almost completely extinct, because the snow that has fallen for a dozen years has covered the entire surface of the Earth. The temperature is so cold that no human can survive, and only a few people can survive thanks to a train that Wilford created. This train has been running for 17 years without stopping, because of sophisticated technology in the train engine that Wilford calls the Eternal Engine.
Minister Mason, please deliver a message to Mr. Wilford.
Not here. At the front.
This film takes the point of view of the passenger group of the last carriage, where this carriage is filled by a group of passengers with low social status. They ate the same food every day because that was the only way they could survive on the train. Stacked beds, shabby surroundings, and the authoritarian treatment of officers seemed to be mandatory for people like them.
Know your place. Keep your place.
The division of the caste system that is not fair was deliberately made by the owner of the train and the machinist, namely Wilford. I don't know what the reason was, but what was clear was that the passengers of the last carriage were not allowed to move to the front carriage until they died. Because of that injustice, the leader of the group at the end of the carriage, named Curtis, wanted to create a revolutionary movement so that later the system on this train would be under their control. There was also an old man named Gilliam, who served as both an advisor and a second father figure to Curtis. Curtis and Gilliam had indeed planned a strategy, down to the most detailed, to achieve their goals. They just don't want the children and all the occupants of the back carriage to have to live their lives miserably. The first step they took was to create some kind of barrier, which they would later use to block about 3 doors ahead. Indeed, due to the lack of existing equipment, they could only block 3 doors. But that was enough, because behind the 3rd door there was a Korean man named Nam Gong. Nam Gong is a security expert who can open every door on a train carriage. This meant that without Nam Gong's help, Curtis and the others would not have been able to achieve their goal of changing the system on the train.
Sue. He's a security expert. He's in the prison section now. We control the engine. We control the world. Without that, we have nothing.
One day there was a woman who was ordered by Wilford to bring a small child with certain criteria from the rear carriage. I don't know what they want to do with the boy. What is clear is that this incident made Curtis and the others impatient for a revolution, because indeed they could not stand living in misery in the very back of the carriage. Finally, the revolution happened.
They've got no...
Everyone from the rearmost carriage quickly raised the barrier to get to the carriage where Nam Gong was. When they arrived, they took Nam Gong out of prison. It turns out that Nam Gong is not alone in prison. There is also Nam Gong's daughter, Yona, who is now 17 years old. That means Yona has been in this carriage since she was born. From a brief debate, Nam Gong is willing to help Curtis to open every carriage on the train, but Nam Gong wants a reward, which is 2 kronals for every door he opens. While kronal is factory waste that can cause hallucinations, on the other hand, kronal is also a highly flammable material. They finally agreed to Nam Gong's request, and the first carriage was successfully opened. There's no one there, but for the first time in 17 years, everyone from the last carriage could finally see the earth they once lived on. The earth is still covered in snow that continues to fall non-stop. Nothing remains except a few buildings that show the existence of human life before. Moments later, the next carriage opened. This carriage is where food is made for the last carriage passengers. To be honest, I don't know what ingredients were used to make this dish. What is clear is that it made Curtis even angrier with what had happened. Let's continue our journey to the next carriage. For a long time, Nam Gong tried to open the door, but it still wouldn't open. But when the door opened, there were already many people carrying axes ready to attack Curtis and his troops, and the battle was inevitable because of orders from a woman named Mason. Unfortunately, in that battle, Curtis had to lose his best friend, who was killed. But on the bright side, Mason is taken hostage and promises to help Curtis meet Wilford. Not everyone advanced to the front carriage. Only Curtis and a few people came forward, while the rest are waiting with such high hopes. The next carriage was opened. They were astonished at how many plants were still alive in the carriage. even though outside the carriage all the plants had died due to the continuous snowfall. In the next carriage is a place where fish are kept. The site was like a giant aquarium, so beautiful. Luckily today is the day a restaurant opens which serves seafood every 2 times a year. The food was so delicious. It had been a long time since they had tasted delicious food like this for 17 years. In the next carriage, they saw meat hanging neatly from the carriage ceiling. They looked back at what they had seen. It was very different from the conditions in the carriage at the back of the train where they lived. Let's look at the next carriage. This is an elementary school for the children on the train. Sorry, to be precise, the children with high social status on this train. Every day the children learn about the greatness of Wilford, starting from Wilford's childhood to how great the train Wilford created. To them, Wilford was like the god they worshipped. There they passed the historic area, namely the first revolution exactly 14 years ago, which meant that the revolution that Curtis and his army were carrying out was their second revolution. It was clear that a group of people froze on the hills there. They were friends of Curtis in the previous revolution. This indicates that in that year the earth was still in an extreme state. Nothing lasts but death to come. Not long after the attack happened again. Wilford's men carried rifles. They massacred half of Curtis' army, leaving only a few people as hostages. Unfortunately, Gilliam had to be killed in the middle of the battle. Curtis' temper was already running high. Curtis grabbed the opponent's weapon and instantly killed Masson, who had lied. In the next carriage, there was a scene that hurt the heart, where many comfortable rooms might be the order of the rich. Then in the next carriage is a luxury restaurant, and in the next carriage is a beauty salon. It was a very different sight from the back carriage where Curtis was staying. A few moments later, the fighting broke out again, until finally leaving Curtis, Namgong, and Yuen to fight forward. Their struggle is not easy. Many sacrifices must be made, one of which is having the courage to face death. They continued their journey. In the next carriage, some people are partying. It was as if they had no burdens in their lives, unlike those in the last carriage. Furiously, Curtis continued onward until he finally came to the front carriage where Wilford was. Curtis asks Namgong to open the door, but Namgong refuses. Namgong plans to open the train exit by blowing it up. Namgong feels confident that the earth is livable again. This can be seen from the increasingly visible plane wreck, whereas in previous years it was not visible. That's what Namgong said. Curtis had rejected the plan, and suddenly a woman came out of the Wilford door and shot Namgong right away. It turned out that Wilford had invited Curtis into the heart of the train. This is the train control center created by an ambitious man named Wilford. Wilford explained that he had planned all these revolutions with Gilliam. Of course, Curtis didn't believe that Gilliam was involved. But in fact, that is what happened. Wilford also explained the reason why he created the caste system, apparently to create a balance between the front and back of the carriages. I don't know what Wilford meant, but that's definitely what he said.
I want you to take my station.
Once again, Wilford wanted Curtis to replace him. But Curtis refused. Moments later, Wilford learned that there was a child under the floor of the train. When it was opened, it turned out to be a child from the back carriage that was brought a while ago. Not long after, Namgong blew up the exit of the train. But unfortunately, the bomb destroyed the entire train and killed all the passengers. Now that are still alive are Yuen and the little boy that Curtis saved. The two of them got off the carriage, and that was the first time they had set themselves on Earth. The film closes by showing a white bear gazing at the two cubs, and the film ends. From the bear's point of view, two possibilities can happen. The first was the possibility that they would both be able to live with the bear's harbinger of survival, and the second is that they will become the food of the bear that makes mankind completely wiped out from this earth. That's all for this video. EQ Movie Recap says goodbye.